I did forget one thing. I want to check your name. Thomas Kircheis? I know I'm saying that
Yeah,
wrong.
it's German. It's horrible. It's Kircheis, but Kircheis, Kircheis.
Kircheis.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Kircheis. And Pulpo warehouse management software?
Yeah, Pulpo WMS software.
Okay,
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
perfect. That's how my son used to say purple. And so that's all I can think of.
It's both, and we have purple as the color, and Pulpo is our animals. So yeah, it's perfect.
That's awesome. Thomas Kircheis. I know I'm bastardizing it, so I apologize, but all right. Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stewart, and today I'm joined by Thomas Kircheis of Pulpo WMS Warehouse Management Software. And today we are going to talk product market fit. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Predictable Revenue Founder Coaching. Founders, let's be real. Scaling a company is tough. You're juggling product, revenue, hiring, and a million other decisions. But what if you had a proven framework and some expert help to help you navigate the chaos? That's where our coaching program comes in. Whether you're finding your first customers or fine-tuning your go-to-market strategy, we'll help you build a business that scales predictably. Now, let's get into the episode. Thomas, you shared an interesting stat with me before we started recording. I'd love to hear that again and maybe learn a little bit more about give me some more context behind it.
Absolutely, yeah, and thanks for having me. So, my co-founder Philip and I started Pulpo due to an own need, actually, of the company that my co-founder was running, and one of the topics was, how do I manage my warehouse? And one would think warehouses have been around for quite a while, more digital or not. And even, have modern systems. In his case, he had a very big ERP that has more than 1 million customers running. They naturally do not come with a warehouse management system. They help you track at some point inventory, but don't help you, optimize the actual movements inside the warehouse. And that can be quite tricky, especially of, products, of course, with expiration dates and so on. And where we focus on a little bit in e-commerce, of course, the speed is the key, and sending out the right product also. So it all started with him searching for a solution, basically. So having, incumbent solution pitched to him, which more often than not are quite traditional. So traditionally sold as well. And as a result, there is, to my knowledge, because we know, which is apparently the largest one that owns warehouse or that sells warehouse management system, there's no solution out there that even has 10,000 customers. Long story short, I am German. Our company is set up in the States. We estimate that a good more than 50% in our very developed countries, if you want to call them that, run with pen and paper, and that's the status quo. And that still fascinates us today, and that's why we built Pulpo.
That's amazing. Now, you said anything that might be in my office, this coffee mug. How many warehouses or might have passed through before it got into my hands?
So yeah, there's a decent chance that on average it goes through 5 warehouses, and a little bit our estimate is that 3 of those warehouses are likely run with pen and paper, right? So you have the, of course, raw material warehouse, and then you have the producer warehouse, and then you have maybe the distribution warehouse, and then you have the actual end to customer shop that might sell it through you through either Amazon or not, and he might have shipped that to Amazon FBA or run in his own warehouse, and so on and so forth. So that's the average of how many touches it takes before that cup actually gets to you.
That is one thing I had never considered. I've lifted this coffee cup thousands of times, and I've never thought, I wonder how many warehouses it went through. But if I had to guess, it would have only been like one. You make the coffee cup and then you ship the coffee cup. But obviously that's not correct.
Yep. That's, probably the phone that you have in your hand, right, also goes through multiple warehouses. We have a few distributors, for example, that work for, I don't know, the typical iPhone for Apple. And they are usually the second or third one who receives that, and who are then the distributor either to the shops, where, of course, it's also warehoused again, or maybe the final customer. Yeah.
So the idea came from your co-founder who owned a warehouse. And I'm going to ask a question selfishly, because it's tangentially related, but what kind of warehouse, what do they have in the warehouse? And then we can get into, why, why Pulpo and where that came from. But I'm super curious. What was in the warehouse?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a distributor of medical products and consumables. So quite a lot of different types of products. So the customers are either doctors running their office or hospitals, and I don't know, 20,000 different products. And so you have also different types of, let's say, complexities in your product, right? You have products that have lots and expiration dates. And then you might even have the challenge of certain big customers want at least a durability of 6 months and so on and so forth. You might have, if you order a cell phone, hopefully the merchant who sold it to you knows what serial number was sent out, right? And all these, intricacies add to the complexity. And he brought me in the evaluation process for searching his own solution, which we eventually backed out of and have created Pulpo. And to be quite frank, so I come from IT. I was a consultant for information security and so on, and so naturally a bit, let's say, paranoid about that software also. We thought it would have been a lot easier to build a warehouse management system, and ignoring the fact that some of the biggest ERP companies do not put a warehouse management system into their core solution. And so it took us just a little bit longer than what we expected to actually create the first MVP also, and figured out of why the hell weren't there so many startups doing warehouse management systems.
I think everybody who's listening is going, wow, it seems like every episode starts this way.
Yeah. And we so on our end, we were ambitious, but also, to be quite frankly, very naive. So in a sense of there's so much complexity. You would think, a product comes in, you store it, and then you pick it and pack it and ship it out. But there's actually things happening. Like, it's a live warehouse. There are humans working. There, stuff drops down. You put it into a wrong position if you don't scan it, and so on and so forth. You have issues with connected systems, and so it is. It's impossible to build an MVP in a year. Right? To be quite frank, it is just not doable. And
I was going to say, this sounds like an exceptionally wide product, and they're like, the MVP must have been just big and chunky, because you can't throw something in that's going to work 70% of the time.
It's not. It's critical. It's critical software, and it needs to run. And every e-commerce merchant, right? We're largely right now in e-commerce and fulfillment warehouses from any size. Sometimes it's 2-3 people. One of my favorite customers, he sends out orchids, right? To 50, 60, 70 people warehouses. So everything in between is covered now. Speaking of focus, and the if your warehouse management system doesn't run, your phone is ringing. So we also needed to make sure that from day one it ships out. It doesn't fail, because if your ERP doesn't work, maybe that's all right. If your online shop doesn't work, well, then it's also an issue. But maybe your Shopify works 99.8% at least of the time. But if you have someone that sends you money and then you cannot fulfill him, that is a critical issue, right? If I cannot make an order because the website is down, maybe. But I'm really unhappy, and I'll give you a 1-star rating if I do not get my product on time.
Absolutely. And it's not only the cost of upset customers, but it would be the cost of your employees are just standing around going, nothing's working, or they're putting stuff in the wrong spot because they're like, well, the app's down, so I put it over here. And like, it's one of those like dominoes that just, once it starts to fall, everything could just cascade into chaos.
Yes. And so there was also sometimes even with those, let's say moderate 20,000 SKUs, when we tested other systems, they all of a sudden became slow. And you're like, guys, you were in the business for 20 years. How is this happening? And we sometimes have this today also. So with one customer sends out Pokemon cards, right? So I think he has 500,000 SKUs in the system.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
So,
yeah.
That's a lot. So, if you search for it, the system better runs fast, because otherwise it'll just, they won't be happy. And so there's many different, let's say, facets to it. But definitely to get to this first product market fit was a lengthy process.
I'm just sitting here picturing the poor sap that had to enter 500,000 Pokemon cards into a system. Like, I hope it was automated
Me too. Me too.
in some way. Oh my God. So your co-founder had the business, or had the warehouse, brought you in to help. Did you just kind of spec it out and start going, or did you do any external validation?
Yes, we did. So there was a first we tested an open source solution just to learn a little bit about warehouse management systems, right? So what does it contain? And then one of the most important parts for us was that if we build it, it needs to scale. And like, without wanting to dive into the deep technicalities, but every scan of a position, every scan of a product needs some feedback from the server, right? So there's a lot of back and forth. And we don't want to have one server per customer. So we need to have a multi-tenant solution. So then what technology? We did half a year of a project of what technology should we be using? So for example, our backend is the same backend that runs WhatsApp or Visa or MasterCard payments. So something like highly concurrent, right? So to be able to know that it's Erlang Elixir, the Phoenix framework. We're using the Phoenix framework on Erlang Elixir. Yeah. And, or what's it called? Pinterest also uses it for the backend, I think. And so, we took a bunch of curves left and right to set it up right, because we quickly saw that, well, if we build it once, this typical, right, you get some investor money, you get your first X customers, and then you basically rebuild the whole thing if you scale. We knew very quickly that this, unless you, take on X amount of money, is not going to make a lot of sense. And so let's say the day one Pulpo, which of course has evolved, but it was always built on the same technology and just, put on top. Also regarding the complexity. So luckily, let's say from that warehouse where there were like 50 people with, what I mentioned, the difficulties of the products and so on, we look at a lot of different solutions on what is the, let's say, top-notch solution with its 10,000 functionalities. What do we need? Where do we want to be eventually? And kind of fitting in, all right, let's make sure that at least in our head, we have this complexity in our head to never run against, let's say, a roof. So to give you an example, so some let's say, other solutions on the market, they came from a more simple pick and pack solution. I, want to grab something, want to scan something, but didn't have in their mind to also take care of lots and expiration dates. And just to add that complexity afterwards is sometimes, if possible at all, very, very difficult. So we took a very, as you can first tell, we took a very long time. Both financially, also as well as just in the time frame to set something up that should work also in the many years to come.
Love that. I've talked about it before. My first product, the first startup, was a CRM system, and our first customer was Ames Tile and Stone, and they were basically a tile and stone distributor. And they came to us after a couple of years. They're like, "So we're getting a new ERP system, and we want you to do an integration." And my co-founder and I looked into it, and we're like, how about we just give you the code? Because we only had one customer. It wasn't worth that much to us, and it looked like a 4-year project. And I'm like, I don't want to go down this route, because just the sheer complexity of all the things and the complexity stacked on complexity would have taken us so far away from the vision. And ERP is terrifying. Like, it's the thing that runs the entire business. It's one of the greatest killers of active companies. You could say SAP is one of the greatest assassins of businesses in the world.
Yeah, we were. So Philip runs SAP, the mid-sized solution for it. So
I've seen, I mean, the customer started with one ERP system, spent a bunch of money, and I believe it took longer, and I believe they ended up changing partway through and going to a new one that took longer and cost even more money. And they're still around and alive, and I'm super happy for them. And I think they might even still use our software in like real niche instances. Okay. But we're not talking about me today. We're talking about you. So you and your co-founder, you looked at the open source, you looked at what was available. I'm curious, the decision making around trying to avoid the ceiling or the roof, so to speak. What was when you were thinking about what is the product we want to create? What went into that decision?
So I think one is the narrative that you read, where you read about the Amazon warehouses, the amazing robots that are coming. And then you talk about with actual people who run warehouses where there's humans, there's forklifts. And that is 90x% of the warehouses. And that is going to be 90x% of the warehouses. The reasons are multiple. The reasons are, first of all, try buying an automatic forklift. I think you have a waiting time sometimes of 1 or 2 years, just getting it, one thing. And the other thing is, does it then actually work? And of course, all these heavy investments into automation. Who can really afford that, and who is so comfortable to make a investment into something that we might have a return of invest in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years? Well, during that time, you might be distributing all your warehouses to only have like quick and agile warehouses all around the country. So that was, for example, one thing: humans, forklifts, and that really well. So naturally, you mentioned it just before, the integration part. So was really important for us, and that we saw in other solutions, because at that point we didn't just want to connect the SAP Business One, but also a Magento, also a self-made B2B, right? So having an open API was something that was important for us. Everything that we have has an endpoint. Everything is headless. The majority of things are available via webhooks, so that you're quite efficient with sending stuff back and forth, or someone listening to you or us listening to them. That was something that was important. Then, of course, certain integrations for key customers we own ourselves, right? So, of course, in the US we have a bunch of Shopify customers, right? So you have those integrations, need to work well. And then right now we're in 25 countries, I think. And so, of course, they're very local, but also locally strong ERP solutions. And we say, well, we don't want to know it. We don't want to get to know it. Here's our integration guideline, and knock yourself out. So then we have our team maybe support a little bit, but we don't know the systems that are integrated into Pulpo, to be honest. We don't.
Really interesting. And so you had the big conversation. Is this something that the two of you just built for your co-founder's business, or did you go and talk to other business or other warehouses first and say, hey?
We went out, of course, him, let's say, coming from a more entrepreneurial background, every friend that we had, every e-commerce, founder that we knew, everyone in logistics, from fans, family, uncle, who do you know? How do you run your warehouse? And I mean, it was a few years back. That's why I mentioned that 50% might be very optimistic. I would say like 7 out of 10 were Excel, or we print out stuff. And we couldn't believe it, because the narrative is, everything's automated, the robots are coming. And the reality of talking with quite sizable companies, I'm talking with a furniture company here who makes 200 million in revenue and has people printing out their picking papers, right? So the reality was there was a stark difference. While we also couldn't believe on what was pitched to us, which was, first, I'm going to need to send a consultant. He is going to have to analyze your warehouse. He's going to have, this typical enterprise sales. Everything's
going to cost millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yes. And we thought, but why? Because at the end, yes, it is. There's something coming in. There's something going out. Why don't I have a bunch of settings that I can turn on and turn off? And then, it works for everyone. So that was something that we really didn't find. And we had a bunch of sales calls from those solutions. And we thought, this is fascinating. So there must be something. And so we understood there's obviously something going wrong. I mean, it was a long time before COVID when we started. And then COVID all of a sudden now accelerated, of course, this e-commerce sales in any case, but also I think in the US, for example, the salaries of warehouse employees have grown more than 50% over the last 2 to 3 years, right? So you all of a sudden also, it's quite costly to, if you're a merchant, maybe 20, 30% of your costs, your internal costs, are the logistical costs. So it's a big lever of where you can say, if you have a solution, and that is also the nice part, to be honest. Both Philip and I, if you get a warehouse management system and you pay $1, you should get more than $1 out of it, which is difficult to sell in a ERP, for example, right? Where do you make the money out of it? I don't know. But it should be measurable. So in his case, we went from actually, we needed 50 people down to 20.
Wow.
And I mean, that's bottom line, right? And that's also where we sometimes have conversations like, oh, but Pulpo costs me X. Let's say, I don't know, 20% on top of the warehouse employee salary, basically. I said, yeah, but it makes him 30, 40, 50% faster. So, in the first year, you should have this money back. So all these things came together and we said, you know what? This sounds really interesting. Not knowing how complex it would be. Let's do this.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel exactly the same way about just about everything I've gotten into. Although, in fairness, not quite as complex as warehouse management software. I love the validation process. I'd love to tell me the story of your first customer.
Which one?
Not Philip.
Yeah, I want to rate them on there's on a different scale. One is the first one where they say we didn't integrate any systems, which sometimes you even don't do today, because they say we have a very archaic system. Let's upload some CSVs. That is still a valid solution. But let's say for the first one that integrate, let's take the one here from Germany. He's one of my favorites. He found us through on our website. So also today, it's lots of inbound. It's lots of inbound for us. Then the challenge for us is that even though you know that there's an issue inside the warehouse, maybe, or you kind of have this as a black box that is difficult to analyze if you're not into logistics, is just finding a solution. What do you search for if you don't know the name warehouse management system? And you don't necessarily know the name warehouse management system. So you search for something like inventory management system. And then you see, this is not it, because inventory management systems help you look for the rotation when you're running out of stock and so on, right? So that's the first part. Like, how do we set ourselves up to be found? What are the, what are the terms that someone is looking for to then hopefully have our, Pulpo WMS or website show up? And he came because I had an interview with an e-commerce ERP in Europe, and he said, exactly, they don't have warehouse management system. Let's talk. And then we were very very transparent, as we always are. Like, all right, look, you'll be the first one here with this integration. What do you do? And it's this lovely company, and I think the sixth generation. They used to sell. They used to make furniture for the German king, right? So it's really, really, really far away, and so they continued, and right now they have one of the most sustainable toy businesses. So they sell toy. They have a big store of toys, and also some clothing for kids and so on. And a well-established company, and they have, I think it's also 40,000 different products inside their warehouse. And their motivator was, I don't know what those products are. Like, I kind of look like, here are the stuffed animals, here are the games, here's the, I don't know, jumpy toy. And that was his motivation. And so we got together. He's also entrepreneurial, comes from an entrepreneurial background. He said, I like you guys, let's try this out. And then that was our first setup, doing an inventory, and I was sweating a bit to count those 40,000 different products, hoping that nothing would. I mean, of course, we test everything like crazy. Everything is automated. We have about 100 updates a year, so it needs to work. It really needs to work. And but yeah, I mean, that was quite a few years ago, and then he went live, and of course this first Stripe payment that came in was quite magical. It still is today. It still is today every time, I think.
100%. I love seeing I don't get the individual payments anymore, but I see like the payments coming across from Stripe, and I'm like, that's a big chunk of money. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's we like that it creates value for them because they can cancel us anytime. Because if they didn't see that, the dollars, euros, whatever currency they send us
Yeah.
is worth it, they don't need to continue, and that's really nice, and that's also what motivates, I think, the team behind it, to be honest.
I'm laughing because you're the only company in the world that doesn't need contracts, because canceling and moving to another solution is such a pain in the ass. You're like, we don't need to lock you into anything, because you'd be foolish to only do this for a year.
Well, we do win over customers, to be honest, from
Yeah.
other suppliers. Yeah, more often
True.
than
I mean,
not.
true, but also the cost of swapping you out must be like 5x, like what your actual bill is. So yes, it's nice that you don't offer that, and yes, it's an amazing thing for you to counter position against your competitors of like, yeah, sure, we're month to month, but the reality of somebody using software like this month to month is insane. Like, of course, they're not going to cancel.
It's true, but sometimes we also aggressively go in there, because for example, of course, we know certain flaws of certain solutions, and there are quite a few solutions that are quite a bit bigger than we are, and we know they suck at really optimizing a route because they don't have a real virtual setup of the warehouse. We know they're not good in expiration dates and so on. So if someone tingles around our website and we can identify him, then we go for it because we know we can outperform him. We outperform his current solution. And that's, of course, then a challenge to sometimes actually get the connection if he doesn't inbound or download something and gives us his email. But we do that. We do that proactively also, the reach out, even though we know sometimes that other solutions are used, definitely.
Gotcha. So first customer inbounded to you, which is amazing, and like not a small customer either. I'm like, when you said kids German toys, and I was like, I'm going to try and guess this. And I have a guess. I'll tell you afterwards, because I don't know if you want to share on the recording. But I'm curious, so if your first customer inbounded to you, where did your next customers come from?
And that's where we talk ICP and focus or lack of focus. It is constantly different. So for example, we have a Shopify integration, right? So you're a merchant, you're one of those 2 million merchants using Shopify. You more often than not have physical products, and you search for a solution. So you might look for, best WMS for Shopify, and then we show up pretty high, just from organic traffic. So from the very beginning, it was always international. It was always it started, but Europe and United States and Canada, of course. That was really a back and forth. I don't really know which one, but it's 50-50 right now.
And sources, they just keep inbounding to you. You put your website up, you hung up your shingle, and you're like, that's it, and nothing else. And
we're on the Shopify marketplace, for example, right? There's a plugin in the Shopify marketplace. Then
amazing.
Well, we have some conversation here and there, but for us, really the key learning for us is when we have the conversation with the customer, he might have come through a certain channel. We can see it on the website, but that's not really accurate. Is always being very annoying about, how did you find us? What did you search for? What was the exact term? Do you remember? And to a point where they're sometimes like, I just don't know, man. I just don't know. But
let me see your search history. I'll give you $50.
Yeah, it goes to that point because a large part of this issue of this crazy fact that the majority is run with pen and paper is the lack of knowledge. So how do we educate? How do we write? We write articles. We write lots of input, lots of blogs about what are the issues in peak time, how to murmur, and so on and so forth, right? To somehow get this very abstract search term that they might be looking for to a warehouse management system's website, which they never have even heard about that term, right? So that is one of our key measures that we've been, or our team has been working a lot on, to identify that, look on the boards of what people are searching for, and somehow get these terms into a informational blog, a post on LinkedIn, et cetera, to then capture that traffic and get them to our site. But we've done many things. We've done massive outbound also.
And so I'm curious about massive outbound because it doesn't sound like it worked very well. So first channel was inbound. You hung up your website and people found you. It seems like one of those complex things where there's a ton of people from an outbound perspective. There's a ton of people that could be involved, but identifying the right 6 people within the organization is extremely difficult.
Correct. So there are a few tools. Obviously, one is you can find. So, for example, if we keep with Shopify, you can find out more or less on maybe how much they sell. Obviously, right? You can somehow traffic that and crawl it and so on. What types of products that helps, right? The complexity I mentioned. Like if you sell food, you do have an issue. I know that because Shopify is not capable of tracking that. And well, actually, by law, you should know which kind of production lot you send out to which customer if you have an issue, because you need to be able to call them. So there's there's certain things that help us identify, and then you can dumb that down to, all right, so this is target food on Shopify, to make something up, right? Then how do you find it out, right? You mentioned before, like, enriching it with certain tools on other people. Do you find them all on LinkedIn? Well, probably not, especially the head of supply chain probably doesn't even have a LinkedIn profile. Chances are in the United States, it's much more likely than in any other country. And then it goes on and on, right? And then how do you target them? And then, right, how do you nurture them? How do you feed them? Some just download something, but they might not want to have an initial conversation with you, or they don't react. So you put them into a nurturing pipeline and sending them hopefully valuable information on how to improve their warehouse, to then at some point, they feel, what, I really need to take care about this issue now. So there's many different ways, but as you said, we were approached by a rather large fund that also runs an outbound business in the enterprise software sector, and to do massification of outbound, both email and call and so on. And it has been of mixed results. Definitely. For us, the conversion, the conversion rate, of course, from inbound is a multiple higher than that.
Of course.
Nonetheless, I think we've tested it for half a year, and we were a bit earlier, maybe. Yeah. And one of the things is also of this chicken egg on how many comparable customers do you have that you can just give them a reference call to. So for us, it's really important that any customer that we have is open for a reference call from anyone else, from the same area, best case, just to have a free conversation. We don't want to be in it. And this combo maybe might have not lined up at that point, where we didn't have enough success cases posted where they could find themselves on the website. So for us, the outbound process was okay-ish. If we would have had to pay for it, which we didn't, because they did it for free for us because they wanted to invest.
I know who these guys are. I've talked to their founder before. Yeah.
Amazing company. I mean, wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool machine they have.
It is. And I'm certain it works fantastic. In our area, I don't know. Maybe we're just not good enough.
If it's the people I'm thinking of, they have a pretty large weapon in terms of like the way their approach. You go extremely wide. You're going to touch everybody at very high volume. So two things. One, I'm a big fan of like targeting is way more important than messaging or like AI personalization or anything like that.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I have been responsible for sending millions of emails a month on behalf of a customer before. Like at one point, I think we had one customer, we were spending $22,000 a month on Google Apps accounts because they had so many. They were owned by a PE firm. They had extremely deep pockets. It was one of those like, hey, it worked at a couple thousand emails, and they're like, cool, let's do 1 million emails, and you're like, what? So I'm a huge fan of targeting, and I think there's a bunch of ways you could do a lot smarter targeting and like carving up your market like this. And then two, if it's only 6 months, the first year sucks with outbound. A really common story I hear from our customers, and candidly, what is it, middle of March 2025 right now, we are in the process of shutting down our outbound, the outsourced SDR side of our business. We're still doing email stuff and founder coaching, but the outsourced stuff isn't working. And one of the reasons, or it's not that it isn't working, it's an impossible investment. So say you came to me and said, hey, I want to outsource SDR. I'm like, great, it's going to be 5 to 10K a month. You're like, cool. You try it. You give me, call it 5K a month for 6 months, right? It's produced the results you have. You're probably not happy. Now, if you had done the same and you had invested in hiring a person and building the systems, you probably give yourself a little bit more time. You probably say, we're going to give this person a year. And the thing with outbound is you're reaching people in any different buying mode, right? So if you think about the audience, your target market, the people that are the lowest in the funnel, the people that have pain that is so significant, they're like, I'm going to do a Google search and see if I can solve this pain. That's the very, very bottom of the funnel. With outbound, you're reaching the entire funnel. And so you're only reaching a small percentage of those people. And so with outbound, the math just takes longer to work out. And so I imagine if you can continue to, and I'm not trying to sell you on, can keep going with those guys, but I imagine if you keep going with a similar pressure and you're very good about working the people who did reply but aren't ready yet, and you have a salesperson, somebody nurturing those folks, after another 6-12 months, you'll start to see really consistent results in the pipeline. And like
Very
one of the, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I mentioned because now, for example, since January, we doubled the inbound lead, and something for a long time we've been working on this content stuff, right? And at some point it then takes off. At some point it then works, and I'm sure that's the same with where, of course, I'm also not the expert. I'm sure it's the same also with outbound. At some point, also maybe you got, a little slap a year ago. Then at some point he's like, you know what? My warehouse does suck. Now it's time to have that conversation because, at some point he was just pinged again and proactively reminded it might have been the busy season. It might have been a bad week for lots of returns where everything just went to crap. So depending on, the target also, of course, in our e-commerce business, it's often the founder that ultimately also gets involved, even though his business might be quite large, but they're proactively involved. So the guy who intrinsically wants to sell, and has this mentally black box of someone is shipping this out. Hopefully, needs to be put into this mood, or caught at the right moment. And that, of course, one can only make sure if he constantly is also pinged towards this issue, I assume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the most frustrating parts of like running the outsourcing side, I did it for 13 years, give or take. Probably more like we started with like email only prospecting, and then we started doing like full stack SDR in 2018. But one of the hardest parts, and even with the email side, people would be a customer for 6-12 months and then they'd cancel. They're like, oh, it was good. And we just closed a couple of deals, but it wasn't enough to be ROI positive. And of course, any salesperson in this context would say, oh, no, keep using us. It's going to get better. And the math it's one of those things that keeps compounding, but you just have to keep putting pressure on the pipeline. And the number of customers that would stay for 12 months and then leave for a year and then come back 12 to 18 months later was infuriating. They're like, yeah, you were right. Now we want to get it going again. And then 6 months later, they're like, why is it taking so long? And I'm like, do you remember nothing? That's funny.
It's very interesting.
So I appreciate the detour, the outbound detour. I can't help myself sometimes. I want to bring it back to your business. We talked about where the first customers came from, where the next customers came from. We talked about some experiments. I'd love to zoom in on that moment where you realized, I think I got product market fit here. I think there's something special.
I think so. There's something very, maybe special about the warehouse, where everyone that runs a warehouse thinks he's doing the best he can, right? He's the expert. So while you warehouse, you inbound, you pick, pack, there are lots of creative people who, no, but we do it this way. And so I think one point, just to sorry to deviate, is for us, while we have some external investors in Pulpo, but no VCs, being lean was always very important. So last year when we decided, we want to make this a profitable company and grow it from a profitability, like this customer acquisition cost part, of course, right, was very important. And we linger above 2. So right, for every dollar that we spend, we get more than 2 of recurring revenue per month, which I guess it's quite good.
That's extremely good.
Yes, extremely efficient. So one of the things is of course, like, how much time do we spend into getting a customer? And we saw, while the time frame is, the average I think is 2 to 3 months, which is quite long, but our time spent actively is around 2.5 hours with a customer. So you have half an hour first conversation, qualification call. Does it fit more or less? What's the surrounding systems? Yes, no. That's a 90% idea of could it work, could it not work. Then, right, also regarding the different, let's say, teams or people that we need for these conversations. That is a bit more high level. You need to know 3/4 of the system of what goes on in the warehouse, and for anything else you can say, this is really expert talk. Let's have that in the next conversation. And then you do the demo call. And when we saw that, for example, the typical Shopify, and then he has a shipping solution in the back, like ShipStation, for example, in the United States, which is quite popular. Once we saw that you have this conversation, and already in the second conversation, you were entering into, what's actually the pricing? Like, okay, that seems to make a lot of sense. That was when we felt we have this, sorry to generalize, but this typical e-commerce merchant, we know his pain points up front, and of course listening to him, like why now, right? Why do you reach out now? Why is it now a topic for you that you want to look at for a warehouse management system? Why the hell not 5 years ago when you started the business?
Right? What took you so long?
Yes, but that is of course also key info for us, and then to give them, look, this is how you save here. This is how you save. Is this going to work for you? Is it so to get like all these inbound, warehousing, picking, packing, I think that is a few years back when we thought, all right, for that ICP, we're good. Right. And then, of course, there's lots of ICPs. So you have the fulfillers who, of course, they're the professionals, right? They look into, shaving every last second of the processes, where we say, for them, we go into our warehouse optimization is better, or routing optimization is better. Or for larger companies that have same products, we take care of a few warehouses from the world's largest online mattress company, where they send out, thousands of mattresses a day. So you have to label them really quickly. So there's always, our product board has, I don't know how many to-dos going forward. Our system is never going to end, but that was like, all right, there's lots of e-commerce customers who use Shopify, who have ShipStation. I think we're a good fit for them. that was when we first saw, like, second conversation, already talking about what would it cost, what's the setup, how do you set it up, how much I can do myself. When we thought, okay,
we got this.
For that one, we got this.
That's amazing. It's such a good feeling of like, I built the thing, now I got it out in the world, and people love the thing. People get value out of the thing. I don't think there's nothing, to me at least, there isn't anything that's much more satisfying than that in a professional context, than like, I built something and it's producing an extreme amount of value for somebody, so much so that they're willing to give me some of their money. Like, that to me is just the greatest.
Yeah, totally. And you also, right, sometimes you just grow with them. And that's also amazing to see. Of course, the idea is, right, when you implement us, you can do the same amount, or you can do a lot more with the same amount of staff, which will, save you some money during your growth if you don't want to optimize it to the last staff, let's say, inside your warehouse. But the other way around, you see, hey, I need 2 more because, we grew, we doubled in size, we need 5 more. That of course is nice also for us, but of course it's beautiful to, to, let's say, share this road with them and see that it's taking them somewhere, and maybe that you even have played a little part in their success because the customers got the right product really quickly.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
So what comes next?
What comes next? We are very self-service oriented, and we have like a Pulpo Academy, a learning management system where you can learn everything. Like your staff, you don't need us. We don't need to go there. We do almost every warehouse remotely. But what I would love is really I am this Shopify customer and I can onboard myself. Right. This is like the next big step. We have some that do that, but they have to be still a bit knowledgeable or more knowledgeable or more fit or more tech savvy than, let's say, maybe the average merchant there is. So that is one thing. And but as I mentioned, from complexity and optimization, there's many things to always improve. That are also like mathematically complex with machine learning and so on, or where you train a model, and then even though the model is maybe by Amazon, so it's logistically optimized, but it gives you out complete not so sensible recommendations, to put it mildly. Why not? What am I learning? So there's many different paths, of course, on where we want to optimize, but there's even more self-service, even less of a hurdle. But ultimately, I mean, hoping to find more merchants and get more merchants digitalized, because there's a lack of warehouse employees. There are not enough warehouse employees. There's no unemployed warehouse employee anywhere, and so that is not the topic. It's more that how do we avoid some waste? How do we reduce wrongly sent out products? How do we reduce returns? What can we do there? That's where we try to help, but that would be, I'd say, the two big parts.
Cool. It just kind of connected to me that I think you could make the argument that you're helping raise the wages of these warehouse workers because they can do 50% more, then they have 50% more value. You can pay them, a fraction of that.
And
more.
That will reduce for you the rotation of your warehouse staff, because there's two things. One is, for example, inside our own warehouse, they used to walk 10 miles per day, 9, and all of a sudden they only walk 2.5. So they're also a lot less exhausted at the end of the day. They won't get, a slap on the back because they send out the wrong product, because, well, with the system, you don't make any errors. So there's lots of, really like keeping your staff, having a happy staff, of implementing a warehouse management system. And ultimately, it's a good argument to be made. Then they should also participate in doing twice the packages with the same stuff, right? Yeah. And what's also funny, because everything comes transparent, we also have customers that say, hey, here's the retired person who just wants to earn a little bit of extra money. So he does 20 pickings a day, but for everyone it's transparent, he's just helping out, and it's not a black box anymore. So of course, he gets paid a lot less than the one who's really aiming for it and running for it and really performing inside the warehouse. So there's interesting applications to it.
That's really interesting. It's fascinating once you get into that kind of workforce labor automation element of it, where you are playing kind of puppet master in some ways. It's fascinating. Dance for me, puppets, dance.
In a way.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us. I really enjoyed getting a chance to learn a little bit more about Pulpo. If people are curious, where can they find out more about your tool and yourself?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Thomas Kircheis. Reach out there. Glad to connect, and also through our website, www.pulpo WMS, like the octopus in Spanish, PULPO. WMS.com. Reach us out. Well, we always also, and we really mean that, also if you still run it by paper and you say you're too small today, we're happy to have a half an hour conversation on how you can also maybe with your tools stay that way. I just had one with a very interesting guy who just created a fashion label. So I said, eventually, but I said, no, not today. Today you go print it out and we have a conversation in 6 months. Because it's enough. Let's see how this goes, and take it from there, and then we can because there's many tweaks that you can do before. Also, you maybe need a warehouse management system, but as I said, like once you have like a two-person staff inside your warehouse, that is already a point where you could look at it, because you might do a lot with 2 people and you don't need 4 if you have a nice tool. So yeah, really happy to help out there, because if we all buy online, we all want the correct product, so everybody benefits, right?
100%. Fewer returns.
Fewer returns. Yeah, that's important.
I love it. Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch you all next time.